Hello, in this video I will explain a few of the techniques used to create this template called my cash flow. Specifically, I'm going to talk about measures. What are measures? How do you calculate them? How do you see them? And how you can add your own. So here in this worksheet, I have a pivot table and a pivot chart, and now I'm parked on the pivot table. I want to see the field list of the field that I can actually use in this pivot. And now the field list is hidden, so I can go to the pivot table tools area in the ribbon, click Analyze, click on the field list, and expose the field list. So here I see multiple tables that if I want to see all the tables, I can click on all. In this case, there are only two tables, the calendar table and the sample date table, which actually has the entries for the cash flow. Now, there are regular columns in this table, like amount, category, date, and there are a bunch of columns at the bottom with the FX icon in front of them, and those are actually measures. Some of them are used in this pivot, and a few of them are not. If I want to see the way these measures were calculated, I can right click on any one of the measures and use edit measure. In this dialog, I can see the syntax for calculating the measures, and I will see that in more detail in a moment. If you have the Pro Plus version of Excel, you will also will have the Power Pivot add-in that you can enable and use and enter and edit measures from there. But this method of using the measures from the field is universal for any version of Excel that you have, and that's why I'm using it in this video. So let's start by the simple um, measure which actually totals all the cash flow for the year. And it is actually a very simple one. It adds up two other measures. The syntax for using other measures is to include them with square brackets. As you can see here, the two measures are referenced total income and total expense, and they are surrounded by square brackets, and this measure actually adds them up. Now let's see how the two element total income and total expenses are calculated. This calculation is more complex. I will make it bigger, and you can see that first of all, the syntax is it's a syntax of a language called DAX. So this is a DAX formula, and this DAX formula that's called total expenses is using a function which is very important in DAX and very useful called calculate. And if I will read to you what this calculate formula means is calculate the sum of amount. So there's a column called amount and you want to summarize it. You want to multiply it by -1 because this is actually the measure that totals the expenses, and the expenses should be negative in order to add up with the income with the right sign. And there's another argument for the calculate function, which says that the transaction type is equal to expenses. So actually what it means is the sum of amount for all the transactions which have expenses in the transaction type column and multiply the result by -1. And accordingly, the other measure called total income is very similar, and it just says summarize the amount column for all transactions that have the transaction type of income. So when I use this measures in a pivot table, they will be calculated based on their location in the pivot. If we draw our attention to the pivot, it has months across columns. On rows, it has the two measures basically. So the two values are on rows. And there's also a slicer on top that can allow you to select a year. So one row shows the values for the year that you selected, and another row shows the values for the year before that. Um, so the selected year value is the measure that we've been looking before. So once Excel needs to calculate the values for this, let's say the first row in the pivot, and the first sale, which says $1,121 for January, selected year, it means that it actually will look at all the transactions that belong to January of 2015 because it is the year selected from the slicer. And in the same way, it will go and it will calculate for each other month. Now, to actually reach the number of 1121, it has to interpret and calculate the measures that are part of the measure of selected years, which are the expenses and the income. So it goes and it calculates the expenses and the income with the same filters of the year and the months. And so Excel calculates every cell for the pivot based on the definition of the measure and interpretation of the DAX formula. So this was a short introduction to measures and a little bit of the DAX language used to create formulas.